Today, we are excited to welcome Erin Huber. Erin is the founder and executive director of Drink Local, Drink Tap, a nonprofit improving health by advancing equitable access to safe drinking water through education, community engagement, and global WASH programs. She brings over 17 years of experience across local, national, and international water initiatives. Erin has collaborated with utilities, municipalities, and partners such as the U.S. Water Alliance to advance water equity planning and implementation. She has been the force behind 230 beach cleanups to protect Lake Erie and numerous advocacy efforts. Her work has reached more than 100,000 people through education and community programming, and she has supported the construction of over 244 WASH projects in sub-Saharan Africa. Recognized as a 2026 Wavemaker by the Alliance for Great Lakes, Erin brings a community-informed, systems-level perspective focused on equity, access, and sustainability. Please welcome Erin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Getting my screen share together here. Thanks for having me, Cleveland Leadership Center. Very excited to be here with you all. I will say a very short little tiny portion of my talk today is about sanitation. So I am sorry if you're eating lunch, but bear with me today. I'm really fun at lunchtime. I started this organization with a group of passionate Clevelanders in 2010, and our goal really was to get people reconnected to Lake Erie. But before I get there, I just want to very high level tell you a little bit about myself. I am a lifelong Northeast Ohioan. I've always lived within a couple miles of Lake Erie. I grew up in Mentor, Ohio. I lived in Lakewood for 10 years, and I'm a proud resident of the city of Cleveland, living in Gordon Square now. And my office is in Ohio City. And I just love being next to 20% of the entire world's fresh surface water. I feel extremely lucky and extremely rich, especially considering the other Great Lakes region of the world that I work in East Africa, where people don't have access to clean water, sanitation, and the things that we do with a Great Lake by our side. So this organization, really our name, sometimes gets some questions, so I'll explain that first. Our name was a little bit of an accident in 2010 after Mayor Frank Jackson held his 2009 Sustainable Cleveland Summit. A bunch of passionate Clevelanders and myself kind of broke off into this working group and started to dream about how we could make our Great Lake even greater. And as we're talking about all these complex issues like combined sewer overflows and algal blooms and all of these big things, we realized that we were a half a dozen people with jobs, and I was in grad school at the time, and we just didn't have a lot of capacity. And so we said, okay, let's think about some easy thing that people can plug into, an easy idea to help clean up our environment and our Great Lake. And the Drink Local, Drink Tap campaign was born to help people think about reducing single-use plastic like bottled water. We live in a very wonderful city where Cleveland Water, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, our utilities are really doing a lot of great work to make our water as clean as possible, both coming to our homes and businesses and going back out into the lake. And as we started that campaign, I started to get asked to come to schools to talk about what we were doing. And we also said, well, just advocating for less plastic use is not feeling like enough. So we adopted Edgewater Beach before the Cleveland Metro Parks were even there. And as we were doing all of these things, I also met a teacher in Cleveland schools who was from Uganda. And so fast forward to today, we still have school programming and beach cleanups and community outreach in addition to our global work. And I'll dig into that a little bit more along the way. And again, happy to follow up with anybody if you have more questions today. So I realized when I was in grad school that working in water could help me touch a lot of issues in the world that I cared about. When we have clean water, we have opportunity, right? We can be healthy. We're not in the hospital. In Africa, you can go to school. You can start to have dreams. You can have dignity. Clean water ties into solving so many other problems in our world. And so we exist today as an organization to solve global water equity through education, advocacy, and community-centered WASH projects. I hope that by the end of this beautiful life, we will have a world where everybody has access to clean water. And we do all of our work with a very small, both Cleveland and Uganda-based team. There's only about 10 of us at any given time. And we are working day and night thinking about clean water and how to make that possible for everybody. Our equity work really is the umbrella to what we do, and our engagement and education work support us reaching equitable water in our world. So, for instance, through our engagement work, an example is our local beach cleanups in Cleveland. Through that, we begin to bring our general public, our general community into the fold and even thinking about water in the first place and our responsibility in taking care of it. And as that curiosity and action grows, we can begin to talk about water access and other things. Through education, which might be a little more obvious, we're in schools day in and day out, talking to kids about local and global water issues and how to make a difference. And this all feeds up into both building our future generation who cares about each other and the world around us, and make sure that we can reach a place where water is equitable. So what does water equity mean? To us, water equity means that it is affordable, accessible, and clean for everyone, full stop. So let's talk about one of two problems we're trying to solve, water quality issues. In our communities, every single day, we are picking up trash, okay? A lot of this trash is single-use plastic. And over the last 15 to 20 years, this single-use plastic has been being created at a pace that we just can't keep up with. Our systems are not set up to manage this much single-use waste. And some of you may hear that we in other countries, we ship our waste to low-income countries who then have to deal with our messes. Some of you may have heard that there's more plastic in the oceans than fish these days. All sorts of problems are starting to escalate all at once globally just because of single-use plastic and this disposable kind of society that we've become accustomed to. But the good news is that there's something that we can do about it. These are all individual habits and business consumption habits that can shift and change. We weren't always like this. And so again, I'm not here to tell you all plastic is bad. We use PVC plastics to deliver clean water to people through pipes and tanks and all sorts of things. And I understand that there is a place in this world for plastic, but a lot of that single-use plastic that we use every single day out of quote unquote convenience really doesn't end up being convenient in the long run. It pollutes our waterways, our food systems, and our communities at the end of the day. So one of the things that we can do to solve this is both buy less, buy better, reuse, repurpose, all of those things. But we can also volunteer and we can go out into whatever community we live or work in and we can clean up the pollution that we're seeing. So Drink Local Drink Tap has hosted well over 200 beach cleanups. Last week at Edgewater Park, we unfortunately celebrated cleaning up our 20,000th pound of trash. And we're forecasted maybe by the end of this year to pick up our 1 millionth piece of trash. There is still a huge problem, and unless we turn off the faucet that's flowing with the single-use plastic and then start to sort out what's left behind, we're just going to continue to become overwhelmed by the waste that we're creating. And we find that on the beaches, it's not a Debbie Downer situation by any means. Most people leave the beach inspired and curious and maybe a little passionate to think about what else they could be doing. Can I go back to the office that I work in and think about talking to our sustainability team about going single-use plastic free or getting everybody in the office reusable water bottles, or all of these little steps, although they're not going to solve the entire world's problems, are a step in the right direction. And without the first step, really no change can happen. So we realize that beach cleanups are not going to save the planet on their own, but they are a piece of the puzzle and a very easy entryway for people to get engaged in our Cleveland community. The other main program that we have in the Cleveland area is our Wavemaker program. And this is a very deep, effective, wonderful program that has evolved over the years. It involves STEM curriculum, in-classroom lessons, service learning at the beach, project-based learning where kids can raise funds to help other kids in Uganda gain access to clean water. And we've reached over 28,000 youth with this program. And this isn't just one presentation going into a classroom. This is deep learning, really focusing on both STEM, but also 21st century learning standards where kids are learning how to communicate and problem solve and think about real world issues, but not in a hopeless way, leaving these programs feeling hopeful and like they have skin in the game and they have power to do something. And one of the last pieces of our program is we do leave behind STEM curriculum books for teachers and also this Make Waves for Change book that we wrote a few years ago. This is a book that I needed when I was a teenager and I thought I had to solve all of the world's problems on my own. And in fact, I found out that isn't true, that all of us can be working on something we care about. And this book helps a young person pick any social issue they care about, make an action plan, learn about project management, and really take an idea and a passion that they have forward. So moving on to the global side of our work and this real water sanitation, and hygiene equity part of our work. The problems are big. I'm not going to lie. When I started this work, 1 billion people didn't have access to clean water. Now it's 2.2 billion. And this is happening for a variety of reasons that I'm happy to have a happy hour with you and talk about. But for today's sake, the problem is growing and it's very hard to keep up. Over half of the hospital beds on Earth are filled with people who are sick from drinking dirty water. And over half the planet doesn't have a safe toilet. So those stats drive me every single day to wake up and work with our Ugandan team to build as many projects as we possibly can to bring people out of these dire situations. And I will bring up Ebola just because it's been happening in Congo and Uganda right now. The way to stop the spread of disease, any disease, a lot of times is hand washing with soap. And you need clean water and you need reliable clean water and soap to do those things. And you need to be in a hygienic and sanitary environment to do that. So I like to think that our global work is not just water sanitation and hygiene. It is public health. It is girls' equity. It is education. It is all of these things that we are helping improve. So people in rural areas in many parts of the world walk an average of 4 miles a day to collect water from a variety of different water sources. Some of you who are well-traveled may have seen some of this in passing. We work in this every single day for the last 17 years. And so both in urban areas, as you'll see in the top right, there are polluted streams where kids are collecting water. In the top left, this is very common water collection from a dam. This child is probably very happy that there's even water there. Can you imagine that? And so we are trying to, again, remove people from having to walk these far distances, number one, to collect dirty water, number two, and to make sure that they can have a sustainable, reliable, climate resilient water source that is there 365 days a year where they need it. On the sanitation side, and this is my only one like this, these are the types of toilets that kids and teachers are facing when they go to school. So this is not motivational, right, to show up in your place of work. And this is where you have to go as a grown adult, teaching kids in the hot African sun with no water or safe toilets. And as a little girl who may be reaching puberty, if you don't have a safe place to wash or clean water to do that, you don't have access to menstrual hygiene products, you are going to stop going to school. You are going to become an early mother, and the cycle of poverty is going to continue, all because you didn't have a safe place to go. So the work that we're doing is solving all of the wash access gaps, water sanitation hygiene access gaps in the schools where we work. And we're not just building a toilet, we're not just building a water system. We're making sure before we leave a school that this school has everything that they need so those kids do not drop out in fifth grade and then go start working in the farm and never have that door cracked for opportunity for their future. And so we build anything from piped water systems, drilling for water, to rainwater harvesting, classroom water filtration, and we build toilets and bathing facilities, hand washing facilities, anything to do to make sure that a school has what they need. So typically we would build like bathing facilities at a school where maybe there's older kids and more girls who have come of age and they need more space to wash themselves. So that's where those come in. And all of our projects are done with a lot of care. And and one thing that really makes us stand out from other water organizations, there's, tens of thousands of us in the world. But the one reason that we built our very first project is I found out that 80% of wash projects in the world were failing permanently in the first 2 years. And when I started asking my favorite question, which is why, I started learning that people were using inappropriate technology. Funders or do-gooders were going into countries, giving people solutions instead of listening. And these projects weren't being monitored and never had an operations and maintenance plan in place. There was no true community ownership or trust building happening. So I'm a little stubborn, as you might be able to tell by this point. And I said, you know what? I'm not just going to go by grant cycles and what funders are demanding. I am going to do this the way that I think will make an actual sustainable, long-lasting difference. And so we take our time. We take our time building trust, moving at the speed of trust with communities, making sure we're doing enough genuine listening and planning to meet people where they're at, move forward together, come up with solutions together, and then long-term monitor and make sure that these solutions are actually working and ask ourselves the hard questions of do we need to change as an organization to do better? And so all of that type of deep work and reflection has really led to a lot of lives changed. The number of people that you see on the screen right now, this is just the original number of people that we've helped. Every single day, this many people are being served by these projects. And so all of the kids who've come in the first grade since that project we opened in 2012, all of those kids who've gone through that school are also benefiting from these projects. And my last point that I wanted to make today is we have a big vision both in the US and in Uganda. We are trying to reach 50,000 kids with our school programming in Northeast Ohio by 2030. And in Uganda, we made the world's first ever district-wide wash plan for schools. So we mapped 155 rural schools in an area where no one else is really doing any type of aid work. And we built a unique wash plan with every single school. And we have already started construction on parts of this plan as of last year. And as we raise more funds, we're planning to bring clean water and sanitation to almost 50,000 youth and teachers through all sorts of water projects and numerous toilets that need to be built that are just constantly collapsing. And so I invite you to be part of this story, whether you see yourselves being a part of the local work that our organization is doing, inviting us to the school where your children go, coming to a beach cleanup, but also if you have interest in serving with our organization in a different way on our board of directors, or maybe as a donor. And I invite you to come to our annual Giving Splash Party on Thursday, November 12th at Gordon Green in Gordon Square. And that event helps support the operations of both our local and global work. So thank you again for having me. I'm open to any of your questions at this time.
Great, Erin, thank you so much. And I will be sure to share with everyone in the follow-up email the website and your email so that if they are interested in volunteering or getting involved, they can follow up.
Thanks.
So you mentioned you have a small team and you are doing lots of big projects. So I imagine that collaborating with folks here in Northeast Ohio and internationally is a big part of your work. Can you talk about who is it that you are collaborating with and how do you make those collaborations work well?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on what facet of our work we're talking about. So if we're talking about, let's say, I would say some of our strongest partners locally in Cleveland are all of the schools that we work with, whether that's at the principal level or the classroom level with teachers. Some of our funding partners we work very closely with. And of course, being having all of our beach cleanups at Edgewater Park, the Cleveland Metro Parks has been a great partner and host. We've been a member of the Alliance for the Great Lakes for 17 years as an Adopt-A-Beach team. I think we're the largest on Lake Erie. And so that's a pretty wonderful like Great Lakes region wide partnership. And then over to the Uganda, and I would say maybe at the national level, talking a little bit more about water advocacy in the U.S. in general. We do partner with Vessel, and Vessel is advocating for closing the water access gap in the U.S. By 2040. There's 2 million Americans that don't have running water. And so being a part of those conversations, I actually find a lot of our global work and my experience there being brought into those conversations. So that's been really eye-opening to be a part of. In Uganda, we partner at all levels, from Jaja, grandma in the village, all the way up to the Ministry of Water and Environment. And so all those different levels of partnership and membership of water networks in Uganda really, I feel like, help us move the needle together as a water sector. To not only just solve the problems of today and the water access of today, but to influence the system strengthening that needs to happen in order to make this all really well managed over time.
You mentioned such a key element when working in different communities is this idea of learning to build trust and building those strong relationships. Can you share some insights into some of the specific things you've done to build those effective, trusting relationships?
Sure. Let's see, where do I begin? Um, so I would say most directly what comes to mind is when we go about exploring planning a new project in a new area in Uganda, um, we obviously are meeting with well, I shouldn't say obviously because not everybody does that, but we meet with the local government to make sure that there is actually a need. So we're not saying, you exist and we kind of like that you have good Wi-Fi and power in this area. So we're going to drop down our location here and make an impact here. We really make sure with the government that there's an actual need and that there is an enabling environment, that we're not working in a corrupt situation as well. And then once we get that permission to kind of go deeper into the communities, we've always had employees who are directly from and within the communities we serve. And that is extremely important to us. So all of our team in Uganda is Ugandan. Even me as an international Caucasian woman going into Africa has always been probably a different experience. And so maybe at the beginning, I felt a little different about this, but as the years have gone on, I have taken myself out of the leadership spotlight in Uganda. And even at project openings, sitting in the back of the room and making sure that our Ugandan team, they're the ones building Uganda and they're the one making decisions with the community. It's not me. I'm there as support if needed, but I'm not the one driving that train. They make a lot of decisions on their own and lead all of that. And so I think in any community, right, when you see people who look like you, who are from the place you're from, and all of those things, it automatically reduces a lot of barriers to building trust. And so I could go on, but our trust building really has, been very proud of the local team that we have in Uganda and know that it goes a long way. As does my very poor Lugandan that I speak sometimes helps.
Let's continue reflecting kind of in that leadership space. How might your leadership style, your approach, philosophy have grown and evolved over time as your organization has grown?
Oh, yeah. Well, especially as a founder, that's interesting too. So I would say you could probably ask my teams and then ask me, and they'd be hopefully we'd have similar answers. But um, I would say that I guess I've learned so much over the last 17 years about who I am. I've made a lot of mistakes in leadership, and danced in these spaces, those of you leading teams of, am I leading too much? Am I micromanaging? Am I overbearing? Am I letting my team have new ideas? Am I creating space for that? I think it's a constant dance and negotiation because your teams also change and personalities change. So I would say that internally, I believe that I have definitely started to be a little easier on myself as a leader for not having it all figured out and not having it all happen one way. And I've learned a lot from my teams because of that attitude. I think I've been able to like learn a lot from the people that I work with. So I know that may have not answered your question fully, but I think my whole point is that I feel like I've learned a lot and become more flexible.
And I think that's an incredible leadership lesson is that flexibility, especially in the spaces that you're working in. As you think about the past 17 years and the work that you're doing, is there a success story that you are especially proud of?
I mean, oh gosh, there's so many and so many that I'm proud of my team for. I'll just share a recent story. So I race sailboats. I don't have a boat, but I race sailboats on Tuesday nights on Lake Erie. And I have a new teammate, and she works in environmental health and safety. And I was getting to know her the other day, and she said, "Wait a minute. Did you come to Our Lady of the Lake School in 2011?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You inspired me to go into environmental health and safety." And I've heard stories like this over the years of, kids that I don't know, whatever we did in the classrooms, had stuck with them, and whatever we had opened their eyes to, or they had been inspired by. And the fact that this young woman had now gone into health and safety because of a talk we did, it just really made me feel like, okay, what we're doing is working. So.
But let's look ahead the next 2 to 3 years. What's coming for the organization, and how can those of us on the call support you in that work to get to the vision of what's coming?
Well, you saw our small team, and you may have heard that resources for this type of work have been diminished quite a bit recently. And so we have a small team. We're working on smaller budgets, and the need is growing. And so I would say that board service, partnership with your companies, your institutions, um, financially supporting the work is all very helpful, but there's also a lot of behind the scenes uh, support that may be lacking, right? So if you have a specialty, maybe in HR or legal or things like that, that you might be able to offer the organization in support, yeah, as we grow through this period, that is all really helpful.
Well, Erin, we thank you for joining us today and thank you for the work that you and your team are doing here in our community and worldwide. It is such important work, and we are thankful to have your leadership.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming, everybody.